Hi everybody, Mark here with Couch to Camino 2026 and 2025 because that's what it is now. From today, I believe it's 259 days till I leave. I don't know if you're going, but I'm going in 259 days. And I apologize, I did not get a video uploaded as soon as I thought, mainly because we had the 4th of July holiday. We had a bunch of folks down here for a big thing at the farm. And my wife left on Sunday to go out of town on vacation for a couple of weeks. So been on my own, rampaging around the farm, trying to keep up with everything that she does. And man, when my wife was gone from the farm, I kind of remember all the stuff she does that I maybe overlook. But wow, a lot of work. So anyway, as I referred to in my first video, a lot of my Couch to Camino stuff is because I've had some Caminos that did not work out super well. And I think the most important one of those is my very first one that we did in 2017. So to show you the lessons I learned, not from successful Caminos, but the lessons I learned from a not successful Camino, although it's one I treasure very deeply. I would never call any Camino a failure or a failure or not up to what a Camino should be. Camino is magical every time you go, even the kind of sucky ones. Before I get started, just wanted to say this is our 1 subscriber celebration. Yay! I don't know who you are. I don't know why you subscribed, but bless you, and I hope I don't disappoint you as much as I disappoint me making these things, because honestly, like right now, I keep looking not at the camera, right there. I keep looking there on the set. I'm terrible at this. I don't know why any of you would watch this. We also have a sponsor. 1 subscriber, I got a sponsor. This episode is sponsored by the iced coffee that I made at 4:15 this morning, and it's still icy. It has nothing to do with the cup. It's just I'm an amazing iced coffee maker. So past that, I'm going to take a little drink, and then I was going to do a walk and talk today, but it's about 1,000% humidity out. It's almost 90 degrees, and I don't want to go outside anymore today. I've already done my outside chores. I took care of all the critters. I'm kind of done for the day. So you get to listen to me. This may be a long one. I have my stupid little tablet here with some notes. I apologize. It's going to be rambling. The ones coming up are going to be less rambling, I hope, when we get down to some more nitty-gritty. But this far in, we're just talking about sort of philosophy and such, and we'll talk some long-range planning here coming up in a episode or two. But for now, let's just talk about lessons learned, or don't do what I did my first Camino. So I walked the Camino in 2017 with 2 friends of mine that I've known for literally 30 to 35 years. I've known them both longer than I've known my wife. They're still fantastic friends to this day. I love them very much. We were vacationing together in Alsace-Lorraine in France, and we were at a little town doing a night watchman tour where a historical costumed individual would take you around and tell you the history of this little medieval village that we were visiting. And we saw a concha, one of the Camino medallions, on the ground, and we're like, "Hey, I thought that was in Spain. Why is that here?" And a gentleman from Belgium said, "Hey, do you know what that is?" We said, "Yes." He said, "I just did it. I'm 72 years old. There's no reason you can't do it. You should go walk the Camino." So we made the decision right there. We would. Now, both of my friends both work in education, so our only option was going to be for the next summer, for June, July of 2017. So we did our research. One of my friends did an amazing Excel spreadsheet, which I may share at some time as a blank form. I use it on my phone. I still use it to this day. It converts kilometers to miles and lets you tally up how much you've walked. It's really easy to manipulate, so you can kind of have not a checklist, but sort of an ongoing, this is where we're staying, blah, 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 blah. Just, it's an easy way to map your route. So we did that. At that time, I was doing a huge amount of running with a buddy of mine. We had done several 5Ks, well, tons of 5Ks. We had done a whole series of 10-mile races. We'd done some half marathons. He had done a marathon. I'm too fat for that. But I thought I was in really great shape. I spent from the fall of 2016 into the summer of 2017, basically working some light construction, and I was remodeling my house at the time, running quite a bit, and then I would put on a backpack and I would try to walk hike a few miles with my backpack to get used to the backpack, to get used to my hiking clothes and my shoes and everything. Maybe once, twice a week. Nothing super challenging because I thought all of my running was going to be enough. That's what we in the business call foreshadowing. I also really didn't worry about my size very much, and I'm not fat shaming anybody out there, but the larger you are, the harder long distance hiking is. It's just one of those things. And yeah, you'll lose some weight on the Camino, but unfortunately, that's not a really healthy way to lose weight and train. You lose more in good assets sometimes than you do in bad assets. I was about 30 pounds heavier than I am now, but still doing all the running. Still, my cardio was golden. I could still run 8-10 miles and it was fine, but I really didn't watch my diet, so I held a ton of weight. Not the best idea in the world. So all that being said, we trained, we hiked together. One of my friends lives in St. Louis, so we didn't see him very often. He did treadmill training, which I'm not a fan of, but he was a monster once we got there. And he told me later what his training program was. And we'll talk about that when we get to actually talking about training, because what he did was brutal and it worked. It was amazing. I hate treadmills, so I don't think I would ever do it, but it was pretty darn cool. Past that, we started our planning in. I've spent, with my wife and my friends and family, I've spent a lot of time in France. So I'm used to flying from the US into Charles de Gaulle and then taking trains from Paris to wherever in Europe I need to go. It's just been my go-to. So we did that. Turns out we had a little bit of a challenge getting to Paris, just comical running through airport stuff. Got to Paris. We had to take a train from Paris, from the Charles de Gaulle airport to, I don't remember which train station, probably Gare du Nord or something, into the train station. So we had to take this bus, a shuttle bus, that normally takes about 35 to 45 minutes, if I remember correctly. But because of all of the traffic that was caused by construction in Paris, it took us, no joke, hour and a half, something like that. I mean, whatever our time was supposed to be, it was double. We got to the train station 5 minutes before our train was supposed to arrive. I needed to print out the tickets once we got there for me and my friends so we could get on and not get kicked off later. We got there, this train station's wrapped in police tape. There had been some sort of altercation there, and we're panicking because we know we have now 4 minutes to get into the train station, get our tickets from the machine, get onto the train. So we ducked under police tape, scurried in through a parking garage, got up, printed the tickets, went to the platform. I'm really used to French trains and French train stations. It's not a huge mystery for me to know where to go. We get there, the wrong train is at the platform. We now have 2 minutes, maybe a minute and 30 seconds before that train's supposed to leave. Hey, sorry. My camera hates me. My camera responds to hand gestures. I don't know why. It just shut off the recorder. So I'll splice these together badly. Anyway, so we've got a minute and a half to get on the train. We realize that, well, we go talk to somebody and they say, it's 2 trains back to back. You need to go to the platform, go as far as you can. You're going to see your train. So we did. We got on the train as the conductor was closing the door, threw our backpacks above our seats, and we had the 3-hour train ride down to Bruitz Bayonne. Great. I love French trains. We went and had terrible food at the bar car, or the cafe car, which is on a French train, one of my absolute favorite things. They have the worst food, but I just love it. It does, the French do train food like American grocery, gas stations do fast food. It's like they kind of try, but they know it's a joke, so they just kind of do what they do. Not great, but it was fun. So we met a guy on the train who happened to be going down to Saint-Jean to start his Camino well, and he had been on multiple Caminos. I think he was from Germany or something. So uneventful trip. We get down to Brits-Bayonne, and we were going to take a bus down, and he said, no, let me get a taxi. We'll just all get in the taxi, and we'll head to Saint-Jean. So it turns out he was in the same albergue, the same lodging that we were in too. So perfect. We got a driver. She drove us down. One of the most aggressive, frightening drivers I've ever been with in my life. And I've been to Vietnam and been in that traffic, and she still scared me going through the mountains. So we got to Saint-Jean. We all got checked into our albergue. We're leaving the next morning to walk to Orison on the Napoleon Route. By the time we got checked in, got showered, got back out of the town, everything was closed. We hadn't eaten except for the terrible food at the bar car. The only thing that was open we could find at that point, I think it might have been a Sunday night, I don't remember, was a little bar. We got a couple of beers, glass of wine, and a plate full of dried salamis and sausages and such, and some bread. That was it. That was our dinner, heading into the Napoleon Route the next day. So no carbo loading, no actual good nutrition for what was coming up. Went to bed. Unfortunately, I would love to recommend the albergue, but they have closed. They didn't make it through COVID, but they were really, really great people. Had a good breakfast, and we took off. So the walk from Saint-Jean to Orison is essentially uphill forever. There's very little up and down. You just go. You start, and it's uphill. I didn't have hiking poles. I had never used them before. I didn't think they were a necessary thing. Wow, was I wrong. And about 3/4 of the way, I realized that I was not going to make this Camino. I had trained wrong. My footwear was wrong. The only things I had done right was I traveled with some of the best friends I've ever had. My clothing, my backpack, all of that was fine. I was going to be a problem. And I knew when we got to Orison, I had to stop multiple times just trying to survive. I was having some asthma issues too. Typically the first day or two that I'm in Europe, I'm adjusting to different pollens, and that is kind of a problem. But my friends told me I was just gray the entire way up. It was brutal, absolutely brutal. We got to Orison. I got a little bit of food in me. And it's not very far. I think it's like 4 miles or something. It's nothing except very steep. So we got there, had lunch, had a little something to eat, hydrated up, and I was just nauseous and sick. I really could not get a meal into me that night. It was horrible. Absolutely horrible. Not the food. The meal was, I guess, great, but not me. So the next day we got up, kept climbing up and over, and made it to Roncesvalles. The trip down can be a horror show. It wasn't bad for us. So when we got to Roncesvalles, I felt a little bit better, but then from there on, I absolutely realized I was in a lot of trouble. A lot of trouble. I couldn't keep anything down. I couldn't keep nutrition in me to keep going. I was bonking, running out of sugar in my system very early every day. And by the time we got to Burgos, I was done. And I told my friends, look, I'm not going to make it. I can't do this. There were some other issues. The albergues were interesting. I enjoyed the communal aspect of the albergues. The biggest problem for me for being in Spain in albergues in June is There's no fans. People hate it when you open windows, and there's no air conditioning. I basically spent the final 4 days that I was there with no sleep at all. And I'm a raging psychotic when I can't get sleep. Just laying in bed sweating all night. It was not good. So I told my friends, look, I've never been to Spain before. So far, I love this country. I just do not enjoy the experience I'm having. I'm going to go home. They said, okay. And because of some weird flights that we had already planned, like my spouse and one of my friend's spouse were flying in to meet us when we got done. So I already had a ticket to fly home. And instead of changing, I just got a round trip ticket from Madrid to Kansas City back to Madrid and came back in a month and a half or whatever it was. And we all met up in Madrid, had a great time. So the flight home was important. The flight home, I pulled out a chunk of paper, pulled out a pen, and I wrote down all the things that were a problem for this Camino. And then all the things that were good for this Camino. I ignored the good parts. Those were done. I didn't have to worry about them. What I had to worry about were the problems. And the hardest part was having the wherewithal to go, I messed up. This has nothing to do with my friends, how fast we were going, the stages we were walking. I had not trained correctly. I had not planned correctly. I was there in the wrong time of year. I misunderstood what the albergues could be. And so by the time I got from Madrid to Kansas City, I think I felt like I had a really solid plan for what I was going to do. And within 6 to 7 hours of getting home, I had already rebooked my tickets to fly back to Madrid in April of 2018. Met up with my friends, had a great time in Madrid, fell in love with Spain all over again. Had a wonderful time. So came back and I spent the fall and winter and early spring of 2017 into 2018 fixing all the issues I had. I decided to go in April and May because it was going to be much cooler. I knew that. I got myself a little USB powered fan that I could plug into a USB outlet on the wall. I could plug into a power bank, my little backup battery. So if it was hot in an albergue, I always had a little fan. And that I have taken with me on every single Camino, and I've used it every single Camino since. So temperature was a problem. Fix the problem by taking a fan and going in a time when it's not as darn hot. Past that, turns out that flying to Paris, unless you're going to goof off in France a little bit before you go down to Saint-Jean to begin, is kind of a silly move. It's much easier to fly into Madrid and take the train from Madrid up to Pamplona and then take a shuttle or whatever to get over to Saint-Jean. Why not start in Pamplona? So I fixed that. We took one little thing out, made it a lot easier to fly in, and we've done that ever since on all 5 of my Caminos. Past that, footwear. I was wearing a very, very heavy pair of hiking shoes the first time in 2017. The second time, I found a good pair of lightweight hiking boots by Merrell. They don't make them anymore. They were called the All Out Blaze 2. Very light, not as light as a modern ultralight trail running shoe like an Ultra or something, but just perfect amount of cushion. They were really comfortable, had a really good time. Never had foot or knee problems there. Training. I stopped running. I really haven't run since spring of 2018. I spent most of my time with my backpack on hiking. At the time I lived in western Kansas City. Not a whole lot of hills, but I found enough that in some local parks, there were hills that were good enough that if I just did a hill loop back and forth, they were steep enough and they were varied enough that I was able to get to the point where jogging up the hills with my backpack, with my hiking poles, really got me in superb shape. I also watched my diet. I dropped, I think my weight difference was probably about 25 to 30 pounds lighter for the 2018 Camino. That made a huge difference. Also just makes it easier to sleep when you're not carrying that much weight. Also, the thing is, so I spent 3 days a week hiking 5 to 10 miles, depending on the part of the plan I was in. And we'll talk about the training plan that I've used for every single Camino since then, and it works really well. You just ramp up into it. You get to the point where you're golden, and the goal is to be able to 2 to 3 days in a row while you're training to be able to hike with your stuff on in any weather, 10 to 12 miles each of those days, and still have enough energy when you get done each day to go to work or do what you need to do around the house, not just go home and take a nap. That's the level of training you kind of want to shoot for to make sure that you're going to be golden. Because if you don't, while you can train to the point where walking 10 to 12 or 15 or whatever your individual Camino goal is per day, it's nice to have the energy to be able to go look at churches, to go look at castles, to go look at museums, to go out and grab some great food. That's kind of important. It seems weird to say you need to train for that, but you kind of do. You need to be in good enough shape that you can do that stuff. Past that, training. Oh, the other thing with training with your backpack on, it gives you a sense of familiarity with your gear. And the best thing you can do is have 4 or 5 times in the 2 to 3 months before you go, when you're training, when you're out on your hikes, it starts raining. That way you've got to drop your pack, get your pack cover on if you have one, get your rain gear on, get your pack back on, and start walking. I got to the point where I could get all that done in about 90 seconds. So rain became a minor annoyance on the Caminos and really never an issue, just because you get kind of used to it. Plus, having everything organized in your backpack and knowing where everything is, it's really, there's a huge peace of mind. If you're out and you need something, you can just drop your pack, unzip it, reach in, you know where in the pack that thing is. There's not a lot of fumbling around. There's not a lot of, oh, did I lose it? You just know it's there. You pull it out, you do what you need to do, you need to go. So equipment practice can be as important mentally as your fitness training. That was kind of a weird sentence. Words are hard. So, yeah, I've already talked about the lodging. I enjoyed the albergues. I have to admit, I do very few bunk beds in albergues anymore. I tend to do private rooms, not because I don't love that community feel of the albergues. It's mainly because large groups of people sharing bathrooms, that is not when you see the best of humanity, and I don't like dirty bathrooms. It just drives me crazy. So if I could, weirdly, if I could have an albergue where I slept in a bunk bed, but I got my own private bathroom, I'd be weirdly happy about that. And the other great thing about albergues that I really learned to enjoy is the communal meals and such. It's really nice hanging out with people. So, past that, those are my mistakes. That's really the small little things that caused my first Camino to be kind of not what it could have been. I trained wrong. My diet was wrong. My planning was wrong. I shouldn't have gone during summer. I assumed that there would be air conditioning and fans. There was not. Like I said, nutrition was wrong. Footwear was wrong. We went back in 2018. My brother-in-law, Clyde, went with me, and we killed it. We had an absolute great time. We did not do the Napoleon route. We've gone we did the Valcarlos route. It's the route I tend to do now, just because I think it's weirdly prettier, and I just like it a little better. The Napoleon route is a hell of a challenge, but it's kind of sterile. There's large parts of the Valcarlos route while you are walking on the highway, although you're doing a lot of road walking on the Napoleon route as well. Parts of it are like walking through stream valleys like in New Zealand. It's very lush. It's very beautiful. Valcarlos is kind of a fun little town. There's a little bar there I like. So for the most part, yeah, 2018 was just amazing. We made it all the way to Santiago, went a few days on, but beyond that, and we got to the point where it's like, we kind of proved our point. We don't need to walk out to Festera. I always plan in 4 or 5 extra days into my Caminos in case of injuries or just weird stuff that can happen. So we ended up spending, I think, 3 days or so in a beachfront hotel in Festera. It was really remarkable. That was kind of my favorite part of the trip, but other than spending time with my brother-in-law. So that's it. Just to briefly touch on my other Caminos, in 2020, I was in Astorga, and yeah, the bartenders were saying, and that was my winter Camino. I was there in January, February. Chef's kiss. Loved Spain. Loved hiking in the winter. I got caught in a semi-blizzard in the Rioja, walking through the vineyards with snow going sideways. Utterly brilliant. I love the cold. I'm a big guy. It's just what I do. Absolutely loved every part of it. But when things started getting weird, talking to a couple of bartenders and then talking to a Guardia Civil, which is sort of like a national police force, but I don't know. Along the Camino, they tend to babysit us pilgrims. Kind of being told, hey, we're hearing that Spain's going to close. You might want to get out of here. It was a little premature, but opted to go ahead and head home. I didn't want to be in the middle of the Galician mountains and trying to find a taxi from some little mountain town to get back to somewhere I could get a train back to Madrid. I decided to cut it short, get home. My wife was in Italy at the time, getting chased down through Italy by COVID. Yeah, that was fun. So that one cut short at Astorga, and then 2022 went back with my brother-in-law and a couple other friends, and we rocked that one hard. 2022, post-COVID, things were a little weird, but that was a great trip. And that one we did in September, October, which fall, walking through the vineyards when the leaves have changed, just amazing, fantastic time. 2024, I went back again in the fall, September, October, little chunk of November. I say September because we spent a couple of weeks goofing around southern Spain with a couple of friends. But I ended up coming back first or second week of November. I had a weird nerve pinch in my hip, and my father had decided to move into a senior apartment at the time. Originally, he was going to move in April. He decided to move in November. So I wasn't going to ask my family to deal with that. So I went home. And then, so the Camino I have coming up in 250 whatever days, I'm actually going to go to the cafe where I was texting back and forth with family, where I decided to end my Camino. I'm going to start my Camino. So I'm not going to do the whole thing this time. I'm going to spend about 28, 29 days walking from that very bar, having the same breakfast I had there, all the way to Santiago. So I get to enjoy the Galician mountains, which honestly is my favorite part of the Camino, and kind of bookend what I had already had going on. Again, as I said in the very beginning of this, just because you don't finish your Camino doesn't mean your Camino was a failure. You learn a lot. You learn a lot about yourself, dealing with disappointment, dealing with anxiety, dealing with wildly shifting situations. It teaches you a lot. It makes you a better person. There's nothing to be ashamed about. There's a lot of sort of Camino purists that say if you haven't walked from St. Jean to Santiago, you really haven't done a Camino. That's nonsense. Because for every person that does that, you can think, I've done the Camino, I've been on Camino 5 times, completed it twice. I've been sitting, in 2024, I was sitting in a little cafe in a little town talking to a gentleman from France, and he was like, oh, we're talking about our experiences. And he said, is this your first time? I said, no, I've done it XYZ. And I said, what about you? He said, yeah, it's my first time. I'm pretty beat. And I said, well, that's okay. This is a big undertaking. He goes, well, I did it traditionally. I started from my house in the Swiss Alps. He walked from the border of France and Switzerland across France and was a third of the way across Spain by the time I met him. So no matter how traditional you need to be to walk the entire Camino, there's always somebody who's walked farther. I've met people that have started in Moscow before things got weird there. There's a big world out there. If you can only walk from Sarria to Santiago, Pamplona to Burgos, Sant Jean to Pamplona, it doesn't matter. Go have a great time. Don't get caught up in, I have to do it exactly correct. I have to do it from Sant Jean to Santiago. And that's what we're going to talk about next time, is how to walk the proper Camino. Here's a hint. There is no proper way to walk the Camino. There's just a lot of people who have very mentally vested opinions because it's the way they've researched, the way they've been told, the way they've read, and the way they think they have to do it. But it may not be correct for you. So let's cut it there. That's everything I've learned from my mistakes. Someday we may talk about what I've learned from my successes, which is, go in spring and fall. That's the biggest thing. So it's not so freaking hot. So I'm going to cut it here. And again, whoever you are that subscribed, okay, hi, it's me and you now. It's just us. It's not the entire internet who has access to YouTube. It's just me and you. And hopefully going forward, these won't be as rambling as this one was, but this is just kind of a stream of consciousness thing that I jotted down some notes and wanted to get out there. So next week, let's talk about how to walk the right Camino, what is the right Camino, and how to decide for yourself instead of letting other people decide for you. So, Ultreya.